Delaware Muncie Metropolitan Plan Commission, May 2021 meeting. Time is 6:01. Let's open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Marta, could you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Borchers? Here. Ms. Carey? Mr. Dishman?
Present.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Henry?
Here.
Mrs. Hensley? Here. Mr. Landis?
Here.
Mr. Matzenbacher?
Here.
Ms. Sipe? Here. Mr. Stevens Hotop?
Here.
Ms. Teamy? And Mr. Wisely?
Here. Okay, very good. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the April 1st, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the minutes. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dishman?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Hensley?
Yes.
Mr. Landis?
Yes.
Mr. Matzenbacher?
Yes.
Ms. Sipe?
Yes.
Mr. Wisely?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes. Thank you. Unfinished business, EPC 04-21A. Marta?
Yes. Jurisdiction County Commissioners, being a consideration of a resolution of approval of the amendments made by the county commissioners to the text of the Delaware County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance regarding large solar installations. And in your packet, you should have a copy of the list of revisions that were done. At the top of that paper are 3 revisions that were inserted as a result of the discussion at the last Plan Commission meeting, and then the 5 additional revisions after the Plan Commission meeting. Lori and I sat down with Lauren Teamy, and we went over things and came up with some additional revisions that we thought would be helpful. JP provided some info on one of them. And so the commissioners approved those changes. And if you recall, one of the discussion points at that meeting was native versus naturalized, and it stays native. So everybody's really happy about that, at least on our end. So at this point, it's part of the statutory process. When the Plan Commission makes a recommendation to the commissioners, if the commissioners make changes, then it has to come back to the Plan Commission for the Plan Commission to take action and say, yes, we agree with these changes. And once that occurs, if that is the case, then I will prepare a report to the commissioners setting forth the Plan Commission's concurrence with their actions, file it with the commissioners, and at that point, it will be considered in effect, adopted and in effect. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
I'd just like to say thank you, Marta and staff, for doing this. I think this is an ordinance that we can all be proud of and set an example for the rest of the state. So I think it's really good. Win-win.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dishman?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mrs. Hensley?
Yes.
Mr. Landis?
Yes.
Mr. Matzenbacher?
Yes.
Mrs. Sipe?
Yes.
Mr. Wisely?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
That is 8 yes, 0 no, with 1 absent. And that is approval of the revisions made by the commissioners. And as soon as I do up a report, probably tomorrow, and file it, then it will be considered in effect. And one thing I will note, that at the next meeting, I will have some filing fees for you to consider, and I've been doing some research, and I think I've arrived at something that I think will be good for a filing fee. And I'll be bringing the building permit fees to the commissioners because they are in charge of that, so.
Very good, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Under new business, MPC 02-21S.
Jurisdiction, Delaware-Muncie Metropolitan Plan Commission. Being a public hearing on the matter of primary approval for Storer Estates, a subdivision consisting of 34 lots and one outlot, generally located on the south side of West Mansfield Drive, on the site of the former Storer Elementary School, Muncie, Indiana.
Very good. Sir, please state your name and herewith, please.
Sure. Jason Miller. I'm with Randall Miller & Associates, 333 East Washington Street here in Muncie. I'm a professional land surveyor, professional engineer, and a certified floodplain manager, representing the Muncie Redevelopment Commission and the City of Muncie. Here with me this evening is Mayor Dan Ridenour and Aaron Briles, project manager with my office. We'll be glad to answer questions as you have them, and as we proceed through the presentation this evening. We appreciate your time for the opportunity to be heard and present this evening. This project is located on the former Storer Elementary property. It is approximately 18.5 acres in size, and the proposed development includes 34 single-family residential lots and one outlot denoted on the plat as Outlot A. The sizes are consistent with the surrounding adjacent neighborhoods for the proposed 34 single-family residential lots. The property is currently zoned R2. We are not asking for, nor do we need, any development standard variances or any rezoning for the proposed use. The typical lot sizes are minimum of 80 feet wide by 120 feet in depth, and that's also consistent with the R2 zoning classification. There's a proposed wet detention basin on the far south side of the property within Outlot A. It is north of the Hyatt Ditch or the York Prairie Creek. It's the detention basin itself is located outside of the regulatory floodway. And this is a unique project that's in collaboration between the city and the Muncie Sanitary District and the Muncie Redevelopment Commission for regional detention, regional stormwater detention. So there's approximately 80-acre watershed that this property is consisting within. And there are some drainage issues inside that 80-acre watershed, not just on this 18.5-acre parcel, but all upstream within the 80-acre watershed. And this project, Outlot A, the pond shown on Outlot A, is designed to mitigate those drainage issues within the 80-acre watershed. We're working very closely with the Muncie Sanitary District and the City Engineer's Office to mitigate those issues. So essentially, the water that is inside that 80-acre area, that rainfall, is being captured in this pond and routed through our site on into that pond and being released 90% less than what is currently being outletting into the ditch. And I know we're not here specifically for drainage, but it always comes up, and I wanted to comment that we're working very closely with the Sanitary District and the City Engineer's Office to resolve those drainage issues. So Outlot A on the south side of the development is intended to be a green space, ultimately a pseudo community park style atmosphere. Around the pond, you'll note on the plat an 8-foot wide multi-use path. That is a walking trail that will also continue up the west side of the development as a part of Outlot A. Outlot A continues north along that west side and ties into Mansfield Drive. That trail around the pond will be connected to a sidewalk along Mansfield Drive, so that offers an opportunity for the adjacent neighborhoods and residential areas to access both the pond around within Outlot A, and there is planned for a potential park on the east side of the pond, about 1 acre in size. And so we're trying to develop this area as a community opportunity to bring in the adjacent neighborhood in addition to the 34 single-family residential parcels that are going to be developed. There will be located a fence along the north line of Outlot A, so between lots 7 through 16 on the south side of Storer Avenue, north side of the pond, and also along the west side of the development between the trail and lots 16, 17, and 18. So there will be, which is also the east side of Outlot A on that little finger going up to the northwest. So we'll separate the area between the residential parcel and that small piece of Outlot A with a fence, along with the fence along the south side of the residential area. The concern would be for neighbors that have a small child playing in the backyard, a ball or whatever might roll south. We do not want interaction between young children and the pond. The pond has been designed to meet the city's specifications for maintenance and safety, but we also don't want to encourage any interaction between small children and the water. We are designing the roads and all public infrastructure to meet the applicable city and other utility regulations for the entire development. We did have a TAC meeting on April 29th, which there were 16 conditions identified with this specific project. We have addressed all of those items on the updated plat that's before you, the full size before you this evening. We do have a few other changes that will be ongoing with the restrictions and covenants, but we did provide a draft version of those restrictions for review, and those will be continued to be refined as the plans for the development continue prior to final plat. Beyond that, we would request conditional approval subject to those items on the TAC conditions, and would be more than happy to answer any questions that the board or any members of the public have.
I don't see any sidewalks going through. There's any sidewalks?
They are shown, it may be difficult to see, but they are shown in yellow. We do try to produce the drawings in color to make things out. However, that yellow is a little harder to see. There is sidewalks proposed on both sides of all of the roadways. Those sidewalks, as a part of the plat restrictions and the subdivision covenants, will be constructed at the time of each lot home is constructed, with the exception of one small area. If you notice I'll say the northeast side of Outlot A along Winthrop Road, that area will be owned by the homeowners association, or at this point, the developer, which would be the city and Muncie Redevelopment Commission. That area would be required to be installed for sidewalks at the completion of the construction of the development. And that is one of the 16 items of condition from the TAC. But there is sidewalks planned on both sides of all of the roadways.
Jason, do you want to speak to the floodplain modification?
Sure. So, in addition to the statement that the pond is located outside of the regulatory floodway, it is inside of the special flood hazard area, which will be denoted as the floodway fringe. So that is area outside of the floodway where the water needs to flow for the large volume of conveyance along the Hyatt Ditch or York Prairie Creek. That area is shown by map, by the effective firm, the flood insurance rate map, in blue. You'll notice several lines going through lot 16 through lot 7, and then it also touches the southwest corner of lot 5 and the bulk of lot 6. That is the effective floodway fringe area. Any improvement located inside of that area would be subject to flood insurance, mandatory by FEMA, by the federal government. However, in order to do this development, the plan is to add fill in that area to extend those grades above the elevation required through FEMA, and that requires a letter of map revision based on fill. It's called a LOMAR F. We're in the process of filing that Lomar F with the appropriate agencies to effectively say we're going to modify that flood insurance rate map line, that special flood hazard area, the fringe, so that that line is moved south outside of lots 7 through 16 and also 5 and 6, so 5 through 16, and only be included inside of Outlot A. What that means is any of the purchasers within lots 5 through 16 would no longer be required to obtain flood insurance. Now, one of the concerns might be, well, if you're going to fill in this area, you're going to shove the water somewhere else, or you're going to cause flooding elsewhere. That's one of the key reasons why I mentioned that we're providing a 90% reduction in the stormwater discharge from our project and the upstream watershed, that 80 acres, to the Hyatt Ditch, the York Prairie Creek. So we are significantly reducing the amount of water that comes onto this property, but that stream is a significantly larger water body. So we're going to do our part. We're going to do significantly more than our part to minimize additional flooding, or to eliminate additional flooding caused by this project, but minimize future flooding within the area, both upstream and downstream. So that also is one of the plat conditions, that prior to the final plat, the Lomar F be approved by the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, Division of Water, for removal of those lots prior to sale of lots 5 through 16. Long-winded answer, but it's important that that information be clear to the members of the board. They'll call on you in a minute.
I'll give you folks a chance to speak here in when you're done.
Sure.
Is there any other questions?
You mentioned you included the 80 acres. How far west does that go? Does that just go to the west side of Johnson Section B?
I don't know that it necessarily goes to the far west side. Aaron's shaking his head. Yes, he has most recently reviewed that map. We've received mapping from Muncie Sanitary District, and so we overlaid that information on our survey and our design file. I wasn't familiar with that specific answer, but he is shaking his head yes.
Anyone else?
Moving the lines, is that a fairly common thing to do?
It is, and there's strict regulations on how it's to be done. There's significant amount of testing that's required to make sure that when we place that fill, a large rain event, flooding event doesn't erode that area. So all of that will be in compliance with DNR regulations. It is fairly common, it is fairly simple, but there is a strict, stringent amount of requirements that will be followed.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, sir, I'll have you kind of monitor what questions
Yes, sir.
people have.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Who's here to speak in opposition to this? Okay, are there, who's here to ask questions? Okay, go ahead and step up to the podium. State your name and address, please.
My name is Joseph Hunter. I live at 3568 Johnson Circle. If you look on your maps, I guess I can use this one to show
Yeah.
you guys. Show you, sir. Well,
Sure.
I'm really happy that I got these plans and saw that there was a retention pond installed, because my concern is
Can you hear that?
Sir, speak into the microphone, please.
Yeah, and if you like, you could take your mask off while you're speaking there, because we're having trouble recording it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Everybody's,
That's better.
I'm fully vaccinated.
Excellent, excellent.
I was really concerned about the transfer on this development of the floodplain west.
And I presume the 80 acres you're
Referring to is this area down in here.
No, actually, the 80 acres goes a significant distance upstream to the north. So all of that water flows through our site and outlets down here to the ditch in that corner.
Okay, well, I'm downstream to the west.
Correct.
This right here is my lot. And when I look at the zoning map, or the floodplain map as it is right now, if you move that floodplain west, as you add structures into that, that puts the floodplain into perhaps my lot, almost maybe certainly a lot right now, which I believe is owned by Richard Cardeman, although he's, I think, subsequently sold that lot. And so, I mean, I guess my question to you is, you know, can you, to some degree, assure that that's not gonna force that floodplain west and then put my house and my neighbor's house and my neighbor here's house and my neighbor here's house, my neighbor here's house into the floodplain?
Do you have any other comments or questions?
No, not right now.
Okay, yeah, so, again, Jason Miller for the record, to
Yeah.
answer that question specifically, when DNR will evaluate a letter of map revision or a letter of map amendment or any modification to the existing flood insurance rate map, any filing that we would make would evaluate our property, and we would not be allowed to have any adverse impact outside of the area that we are gonna be filling. So I can assure you, there will be no impact both downstream as well as upstream on the creek. So that all of our impact from an exhibit perspective would be minimized to right here. So when we fill in that area, I'll hold it up so people can see. When we place fill and move that line from that blue down to here, it's only gonna be impacted starting right here and terminating over here.
So that, may I ask a follow-up question?
Sure, good.
So that blue line on this map is what the proposed or
That's the existing.
anticipated floodplain
No,
line would
no,
be?
sir. That is the existing line here.
Okay, yeah.
We're gonna move it down to here. So it'll move south out of lots 5 through 16.
Okay, and then can you explain to us what, for those of us that live back there, I mean, for years, we've experienced flooding in
Mhm.
this area right here and this area right down in here.
Yes.
And so are there going to be additional steps taken? Because if, just so you folks on the board know, Mansfield is the only access back to Johnson Circle. So when that road floods, and believe me, I've had to have a car engine replaced because of that, you cannot get through. It's impossible to get through.
Yep. Brian Stevens Hotop, city engineer. I guess I might speak from both the role as city engineer as well as the MSD board member. So this is a project that was of interest to the MRC and the city prior to MSD getting involved. When we heard about the project occurring, we specifically wanted to partner up with it. So there are a significant number of improvements to the infrastructure for drainage that are incorporated into this plan that were not part of the development for the subdivision. So the significant amount of drainage is coming from north of Mansfield. So collection of all the drainage along Mansfield at multiple locations, both on the east and west side of the subdivision, the increase of pipe size to the south, the detention in the regional pond, the significant release, or the reduction in release to the high ditch. All of those things are being incorporated. In addition to Mansfield reconstruction, like the complete kind of resurfacing, sidewalks, curbs, all of that work along Mansfield will be getting done as well as the addition of new storm sewer inlets and drainage infrastructure. So we are trying to, from the sanitary district side of things, really fix what has been a long known problem in the area, as well as trying to benefit the legal drain that's really the county's, but we know that there's significant drainage problems that occur from flooding downstream of the site. So there's certainly been a significant effort to try and incorporate a very holistic view to address all those concerns.
Well, I can say that it's gotten better over the years. This down here doesn't drain like it used to.
Yep.
This down here occasionally will still flow.
Yeah, and I've heard reports that there's multiple feet of flooding down here at times. So the addition of inlets and large storm sewer trunk lines through the subdivision to the pond is part of that solution. Additionally, I mean, the sanitary district has a benefit or an interest in water quality. It being a wet bottom pond, there's certainly a water quality benefit as far as treating urban runoff. So that's something, again, from the sanitary district side of things is appreciated.
Okay, ma'am, could you go to the podium, please? Please state your name and address.
Michelle Cook, and I live at 1208 North Grove Court in Muncie. I have several questions. First of all, I would like to know, are these lower income properties, and what is the pricing of the properties going to start out at?
Absolutely, Mayor.
Sure.
Dan Ridenhour, Mayor of Muncie, and I appreciate your question, Michelle. No, when we started talking with the neighborhood association, there were a number of things they did not want, and there were a number of things they wanted. So the main thing they wanted was they wanted the sewer issues solved. They wanted that flooding issue solved, and so we've worked hard to make sure that's the case, and that's why that retention pond is 2.5 football fields long. In total length. It took that in order to solve that particular problem. So that was the one thing one of the things that they wanted solved. One of the things that they said they did not want was apartments. So we're making sure there are no apartments in there. Another thing that the neighborhood said they wanted is they wanted single family homes. There's not duplexes, and so they're all gonna be single family. Another thing that they said is they don't want condos, so that's not gonna be condos. These will be marketplace homes. With the lumber cost today, I would say, and I think it's about a 1,300 square foot minimum that's been placed on these homes. I think that's the range, 1,300 and up. We're looking at, if you get lucky, it might be 175, but probably most of them are going to be in the 200 range, which is probably similar to the neighborhood. And that was the other thing we wanted to accomplish. We wanted to make sure that it was something that was going to enhance the neighborhood values, the pond, the park, the walking paths. All of those are to enhance the neighborhood, which does an increase in property values, which does an increase in the assessed values, which is how we fund our city. So these are market price, they're going to be in that, and somebody may have figured it out, but it's probably could be more than that. But at 130, at 130 a square foot for 1,300, I mean they're going to be 200,000 range, and maybe some higher depending on the size of the home. That helps.
Thank you. Miss, just let us go ahead and give us all your
All my
questions. And
questions?
we'll try to
Okay.
get everything
I
answered
got some.
all at once, please.
Okay, well, I got the pricing of properties. I was, a little concerned. I've heard rumors that you're gonna take a path from that area and you're gonna go, connect it all the way to the pool, to Catalina Pool. If you do that, that goes through, some lots, which ruins the property value of those lots. You cannot resell those lots. And I wondered if that was true. I'm very much against that. I'm not happy with the trails. The whole trail thing, I think, is a waste of time and money. The money needs to be spent on the roads. If you can't even keep up the roads and they're full of potholes, how are you going to keep up a trail? It's going to look just like the road someday, and you need to take care of what we have first. I mean, that's my opinion. So I'm not happy with the walking trails, and I think you've ruined everyone's property value on Riverside. I think that is an atrocious thing to expect people to do. You could have a little girl's bedroom window right beside a trail. I think that's wrong. And so I think the trails are overdone. And if you are thinking of connecting all these houses to Catalina, you're going to ruin other properties. I think that's wrong. Also, with the trail, we're getting people just where I live constantly throwing debris. You know, you want people to walk on the trails, but there's trash everywhere now. I have people that walk in my yards, on my lot, they're everywhere. I've got trail cams up. I've got trespassers all the time. So all these trails are just lending itself to more people going through your properties. And I don't really think it's fair to have trails so close to your home. I didn't live in Muncie. Wouldn't have bought my property here if I had known that's the way it was going to be. So I'm not happy about that. I was just wondering about the size of the properties. Oh, and if you were going to build the properties first and wait for people to buy them, or are you going to wait for people to buy the property first and then build the home? How's that going to work? So that's another question. And in general, I have a problem with the city of Muncie becoming a realtor, so to speak. I mean, that's not your job. Your job is to take care of the roads, to bring jobs to the community. It's not to walk around town and see what you can take over. I looked online at the 109-page document that you have for the Muncie Redevelopment Commission. It's huge. It only talks about prettying up the city. Well, we need jobs. We don't need pretty signs. And we need our streets to be fixed. We don't need empty houses and shells of buildings hoping that somebody comes and wants to start a business there. Because trust me, if they have a business plan, they know what they want their building to look like, and it's not going to be what you built. So I have a lot of problems with the city of Muncie, but the trails right now and just the building of everything and your whole Muncie redevelopment ideas of just prettying things up and not fixing the real problems here, I have a huge problem with.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak? Good. Take the podium, miss.
But you didn't answer my question about the trails.
I'm sorry?
You didn't answer any of my questions about trails.
We'll talk about the trails in a minute.
I'm Sue Arrington. I live at 3200 West Brook Drive. My house is just across the creek from the Stower property we're talking about. In fact, I live right next to the little path and the bridge that goes across. So I see lots of people walking by. They love this property. They take their dogs, their kids are back there, they're flying kites. It's a really wonderful asset for the neighborhoods. So because I see a lot of people, I'm out in my yard a lot, they're always asking me about what's going to happen with this property. So that's one of the reasons I'm here, not just for myself, but others who have asked me questions about what's it going to look like and what's it going to be. So I guess some of my questions are for myself, but others' questions are for other people. Since I live right next to that existing path, will that continue to be there? And will it be maintained? It's getting pretty ratty right now. A lot of the concrete has been sort of broken up. But if you're building a path, anyway, is this something that will be maintained along with it? So that's one question. Another one is looking at the map. Is that yellow space, is that the creek, or is that some of that floodplain?
Oh, looking at this,
Yes.
the yellow is the floodway, and the creek is like at the bottom. It's the dark line that runs there along the bottom.
Okay, I see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So there's the creek,
Okay,
and that's the floodway.
yeah. So there will be space between the retention pond and the creek, where people could be walking around or with their dogs and whatnot. Because I live right across from that property, when we get a big rain, I see how much water ends up standing there about where the floodplain is. And I take it the retention pond will be taking care of that problem? Okay. My property never floods because the bank on my side is higher than the north side. But the people who live on the other side of that little path sometimes have flooding. So is what you've described, is that going to take care of their flooding problem? They're on Brook.
I'll answer that, and if that's okay, I'll answer that in all my rebuttals.
Sure.
Okay, so that's, I mean, they haven't really complained, but they have told me that my neighbors on the other side of the path have had flooding in their crawl space that's gotten into their, into the home. I remember in one of the early public meetings, people were asking, is it going to be one home builder, one developer, or will there be multiple? And it seemed like people preferred the multiple home builder approach, and I didn't know what it's ending up being. Okay. Is the trail, by the way, I really like trails. I think they're a real asset. As people want to be outdoors, they want to get more exercise, and I think it's something that improves the attractiveness of a community, especially those who are young. I mean, they really like, well, even the old ones like to get out and walk too. I think everybody is more interested in keeping their health up than what we used to hear people talking about. So is that trail going to be on the south or the north side of the pond? And I would love to see a trail that went to the Catalina, that went from the east, from the duck ponds at Ball State on the east, and then clear over to actually Morrison Road. But I haven't heard that that's going to happen, so I'm wondering if it is. Just as you were wondering. Another question that I've been asked was about the size of the houses in relation to the size of the lot. I've had someone who questioned whether you could get a $200,000 house onto a lot, and people really want to have it, on the size of the lots that we're talking about. And I don't know, maybe some of these houses will be 2-story or 1-story. But I think that's the end of my questions.
Thank you. Sir in the back?
May I?
Sure.
My name is Rhett Scott. I live at 1500 North Petty Road in Muncie, Indiana. Commissioners, Mayor, representatives, and other attendees, thanks for letting me speak here today. I have a few questions and a few comments. First of all, I'm interested in if there is a projection of the cost of development. And since the city and other entities in our government are the holders of the property at the moment, and the city and others are not a profit center, that this would be taxpayer money that would be spent either now or through some bond to develop. So I'm interested in what the cost of development would be. I know I recently shopped concrete, and if we look at the plat information for this, and we just take the square footage of the streets, you know, at a starting point, we're at, you know, just a little south of $1 million in order to put in just concrete. And I know there's got to be a lot more than that. So I'm curious as to what the number is there. This has already been brought up, but is it usual for the city or other government entities to be involved in development? And that's been brought up by someone else, and I'm curious about the role of government in taking on a development project of this scope. There was something that was brought up earlier that I'm curious to learn more about who participated in it and what the nature of, I'm not going to use the right word, but tact. And there was like 16 points that came up. I'd like to know more about that. What is that? Who participated in that? To accomplish the drainage project that has been something that since I've and my wife have owned our property, which is over 2 decades, there's always been flooding in the area, and it's always been a concern of the area. We've heard stories from neighbors of raw sewage running through their properties and so forth, and it's great that this will get taken care of, but I'm wondering about doing that project to take care of that, which is a need that's been going on for a very long time, versus this project collectively as a whole. My specific question is, the homes that exist to the north of the development, what will the construction disruption be to those properties? I've heard words about larger drainage pipes being put in. You know, is this all going to be accomplished from the existing drive that was in front of store to the south, or are there going to need to be properties disrupted in order to put in drainage in order to drain this entire 80-acre area? So what should the neighborhood expect in that respect? And then a question was brought up by our representative about multiple home builders. What is the value of having multiple home builders versus a single developer of a project like this? And that's where I get into just a few opinions that I would like to make, and these are my opinions, and this is how I feel, is having a central point of contact in it when the development is going on, I feel is very valuable. If you have multiple home builders that have purchased a lot and then are building independently, and you may have issues with things that are going on, you know, this is surrounded on all sides by a very established neighborhood. Not having a central point of contact in order to hear complaints about what's going on, that just seems like a tough thing to manage with multiple home builders going on. I could be naive about that. And then the second thing is that things take time. If we look around just in our immediate neighborhood, there are 3 developments that come to my mind that have been going on for at least a couple decades that are not completely finished. If we look at Pinewood Trace at Riverside and Jackson, there are lots in there that appear to maybe they haven't sold at all, or they've been sold once and are on the market again. Empty lots. I don't see in my mind, and this is where I could be naive about the nature of that development, a lot of difference between those lots and that area versus what's going on here, and that those are not fully developed at this point in time. It's been a long time that that's been there. When that started out, I can vividly remember that it was one developer that put that in and put that infrastructure in, and yet it is still languishing there and is not fully developed. You also have Whispering Pines, where there's at least one lot or more available in there that as recently as a couple of years ago was for sale and not developed. And then there is the development on the old Crapo estate, where there are a lot of property there that it may be sold, but nothing going on there. So as far as an absence of I don't know what the right term would be, but building stock to build on. It seems like in our immediate neighborhood that there is plenty there that is yet to be developed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right. Sir, would you like to speak about other questions, please?
Sure. I'll try to go in order, and forgive me if I forget anything. I'm sure we'll come back and touch on the various items that I may have missed. Ms. Cook had mentioned the spec homes versus lot sale. The project will be selling lots. They will not be spec homes constructed. They will be sold vacant lots to multiple developers. I think that was one of the things we heard on several of the landowners that had spoken on this project. I don't know that I'm the person to comment on whether or not this project should or should not include a trail. So I'll reserve that comment for someone else. That may simply just be a difference of opinion. I am not aware of any intended long-term projection of a trail between here and the pool, so I can't specifically comment on that. I can say that this is not part of this project in hand this evening. So if that's a question that can be directed elsewhere outside this meeting, I can't comment on that. There were at least 2 comments made about whether or not the city's role is to act as a developer. Yes, it is somewhat common. This is not the first time that a government entity in Indiana or north central Indiana has acted as a pseudo developer. The city has property. Muncie Redevelopment Commission has property. It's intending to subdivide this into 34 single-family homes or home sites. I'm aware of at least one other location actively right now that we are involved in that another community is doing the same thing. However, it's approximately 2.5 times larger. Not necessarily apples and apples for this specific discussion, but as it relates to the question, yes, it has happened before. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to speak on the legalities of it, but it is something that has happened. The question raised by Ms. Arrington about the path and the bridge on the southeast side of Outlot A as it crosses the ditch, yes, that is included in this project. That was one of the requirements from TAC, and I'll answer that specific question here in a moment. But yes, the trail, sidewalk, path across the creek will be maintained. It will be improved as a part of this project. The next question was whether or not the adjacent landowner east of the bridge and the path, that property on the south side of the stream, whether or not that property would be impacted. Would this project cause more flooding on that property? That answer is no. This project will, as a part of the development and the approved or to be approved letter of map amendment or revision based on fill, the Lomar F, that project will impact only our area. However, because it's tied to drainage and that 80 acres overall will see a 90% reduction in runoff, it is presumably the case, although not yet modeled, but it is presumed that that drainage impact, that flood impact would be reduced. That's simply hydraulics and hydrology. I don't have any data to support that, but my engineering experience would support that would actually alleviate some of those issues. However, I have not personally modeled that aspect yet. The next question was whether or not the trail was on which side of the pond. The trail will actually completely surround the pond. It will be a perimeter trail all the way around the pond. And on this exhibit, so it will go all the way around, and then there will be a trail connection up the far west side tied to Mansfield Drive. And we don't yet know what will happen on the far east side of Outlot A where a potential park might be located. but it will go all the way around the pond on Outlot A. The question of whether or not the home sizes of $200,000+ would be able to fit on the lot, doing some quick math, if you take an average lot size, for example, lot 114 is 80 foot wide by 120 foot deep. If you take the maximum buildable area of that pad, so the lot size minus the setbacks, both side yard, front yard, and rear yard, that would leave an area of approximately 64 feet wide by 65 foot deep. That is a significantly large first floor home site. You can get a very large home on even a 60 by 60 pad. So yes, that size of home can more than sufficiently fit on these pads. And if you were to build a 60 by 60 home, multiplied by the value that was used previously of $130 a foot, you will be significantly larger than $200,000. And I believe that answers all of Ms. Arrington's questions. Mr. Scott mentioned questions regarding projection of development costs. And as of right now, I'll defer to the city engineer on the development costs. However, I would comment that the statement regarding concrete roads costing upwards, or paraphrasing, of about $1 million, the roadways in this project are asphalt. So the entire roadway will not be concrete. It will be asphalt with curb and gutter, concrete curb and gutter. So I want to make sure that that was cleared up fairly quickly, because those roads will not be concrete. The 16 points for the TAC committee, that is an advisory committee that is reviewing the subdivision plat that was submitted. This is common, and I think I'll probably defer to Marta if you want to answer that specific question.
Yeah, the subdivision review committee is in place just for this purpose, to review proposed plats like this, because it includes utility companies, the city and county engineer, the county surveyor, a drainage board representative, our office, along with, who else is on there? But it is a technical review. So the people that are involved in the technical issues that you come up with any development like this, they are represented on that. Oh, also, stormwater was represented, and the
Soil and water.
Soil and water, right, thanks. So it's like a technical review. They make sure that all of the requirements that are in place that impact development are correctly addressed. And usually we end up with something like this, where recommended conditions and modifications are made from that committee to the Plan Commission. And it's just a way to ensure that everything that we've been discussing gets done. So.
Thank you. Then one of the next questions was the concern for disruption of houses north of Mansfield, what impact this development would have on those. And I think you correctly answered your own question about the development being primarily south of Mansfield. There will be some work done along Mansfield Drive, however, nothing to the north of Mansfield. And aside from looking out of your home or driving nearby in the area and seeing a construction site, there will be no impact directly to those residences north or east, west, and south of the property itself. Construction activity will be going on, so it will be an active construction site, but it won't be early in the morning, it won't be late in the evening, you won't have work going on at midnight. It will be consistent with the requirements of the city for development in a residential area.
Jason, there would be
some drive access coordination that would happen with adjacent property owners.
That's correct. So there will, emergency vehicles and residential access will occur at all times. But as a part of the resurfacing of Mansfield Drive, obviously there will be some staging and coordination with the residences in the area or individuals driving through the area, just as much as you would a city street. When it's being resurfaced, you may have to have a minor delay as the construction equipment is mobilizing or actively creating their operations to pave a street. But beyond that, there would not be any impact. And I believe that answers the questions that I can provide an answer to.
Marta, do you have follow-up?
Yeah, I had a couple items. One was, there was a question about if you're talking about multiple home builders, the idea that it's a lot easier for people around there, if they have questions or issues, to have a single point of contact. And actually, it would not be the individual builders. If there was a problem with an individual builder, then that's the kind of thing that would be reported to the building commissioner, and that's just standard procedure that could occur anywhere.
Right.
If there's an issue with the development, then we could say that we would expect the city to appoint a project manager, and they would be the ones, whoever that might be, but the project manager would be the single point of contact for people in the neighborhood if they have questions. Oh, the other thing I would mention, it was mentioned, there was a question about how this area would compare with Pineview at Riverside. And Pineview at Riverside was a planned unit development that was designed with very, very small lots and small homes. And it's a non-traditional layout where the regular zoning standards in the R2 residence zone are not met by each of the lots in Pineview at Riverside. It's a totally different type of development, and this is more what we would call a traditional single-family subdivision with standard lots based on the zone. And so I think that was my notes.
Very good. Would any of the city officials like to comment?
Brian Stevens, Hotop, city engineer. There was a question that I think was Jason had kind of pointed in my direction. The original cost estimate for development was just over $1 million. That was prior to looking at the storm sewer infrastructure that MSD was interested in providing. So that cost estimate needs to be updated, as this has been kind of a more recent addition to the plan. So certainly MSD would be paying their portion of all the storm sewer improvements, including an expanded regional pond and the grading that goes along with that, and all the pipe sizes and inlets and the restoration to the roads that are happening there. So I think that's all that I had to add at this point.
Thank you. Mayor, do you have anything to add? Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Anyone I'm talking about anyone on the board. Go ahead.
I'm sitting here, I don't know how many of you've seen the commercial on TV where the lady's sitting on the beach and they're talking about insurance and clustering a program.
Yeah.
This has been my profession for over 40-some years. I'd just like to make a couple of comments for some of the audience. You want different builders in a neighborhood. You don't want a neighborhood that's got cookie cutter houses that are all alike, that when you go home at night you don't know which house is yours. It would be ideal to have a parade of homes with a lot of builders there like we did years ago. It would be terrific. Talking about the subdivisions, when you talk about Pineview, that is a special neighborhood. I've sold in there myself. Those are zero lot lines. That means there's no yard. The people don't want to have any yard. They're very small houses. Mostly retired people live in that neighborhood. Whispering Pines, there again, the subdivisions are very great. The houses have to be of larger square feet, not of this average buyer size that we're talking about here. Value of the houses around the neighborhoods, it's going to go up because it's going to be desirable. Today, people want quality of life, parks, trails, convenience, sidewalks. All those things are very important when people look at buying, purchasing a home for their family. The park, the 1,300 square feet, actually, I envision maybe 14 to 16, maybe even 1,800 square feet if it's a two-story house, or a story and a half, or, bi-level. That's going to be the size that I envisioned there. My only problem is I don't know how you're going to limit. If somebody comes in with gobs of money and wants to buy the whole kit and caboodle, how are you going to stop them? Because that's not equal housing, that's not fair housing. So I would prefer lots of builders in there with different styles and designs. Muncie right now, just to give you a little bit of history of what's going on. We normally in our county, Delaware County, have roughly 1,100 to 1,500 homes on the market, active, ready to be sold at this time of year. Do you know how many we have today? Active listings? 97. The market is crazy. I have never, ever seen it like this. People would like to put their house on the market, but where are they going to go? I have referrals coming into my office from out of town that want to buy houses, especially new construction, because that attracts the quality of life, makes it better. But when corporations come into town, they want to know what the real estate market's like. They want to know what the schools are like. They want to know what the parks and the trails and, I've had a gentleman come into town and he knew all the bike trails in town before I even knew it. People do their research on the computer to see how nice of a community it is before they make that move. So those are some little tidbits about real estate. We need more houses. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I want to echo everything that she just said. I've been a builder in the community for almost 60 years, unfortunately. I'm good or bad. I look at it a little bit different. I've been involved with a thing called the Muncie Home Builders Association, as well as the National Association of Home Builders. I was back there in the day when we had parade of homes, and we'd like to put another parade of homes on, and this would be an excellent place to do it. The lot sizes are very consistent. I've already heard from not having any trouble building 13, 14, 1,500 square foot houses or bigger. I would hope that we would get multiple builders in there to do that. Part of the problem we have right now, folks, an average 1,500 square foot house, the cost of the material alone is somewhere between $35,000 and $40,000 more. Building a home in that area for $200,000 will be a miracle. 6 months ago, I was paying $12 a sheet for half-inch OSB. I'm paying $38 a sheet for it today. It's going to be difficult, and it's going to take time for this to develop. Thank goodness we have Ball State, and thank goodness we have BMH, they're buying a lot of properties, and folks, when they buy properties, we lose tax base. This is gonna be a tax base that's gonna be a big improvement to help, and gonna solve the problems, I don't mean that. But this will be a tax base that we need. I had experience with the Cardinal Greenway. I was on the board of directors. Got a lot of telephone calls about the Cardinal Greenway from residents that live on both sides of it. A lot of complaints. Since that has happened, I've gone back and talked to some of those people. They love the Greenway. They think it's great. I understand there's problems with some of them. There's problems, it doesn't make any difference if you just put a sidewalk in, okay? That's part of the game. I'm encouraged that this is happening in our community. You just heard from somebody that's been in the real estate business for a long time. This is unbelievable that we only have 80 houses or 90 or whatever the number is for sale. We don't have lots to develop in this size and this price range. I understand everybody's concern. I'm more than thrilled that sanitary districts involved in this to resolve the problems of flooding north of this property. Unfortunately, it just doesn't go far enough east. We gotta take that problem up one of these days. But I hope the American public understands, and the citizens of Muncie, how important this development really is. And it's gonna be a shot in the arm to our community, in my opinion. And because the city, individuals, sanitary district, and everybody have worked together to not only develop some ground, but also to solve some problems. I think the city should be commended for that. Thank you.
Any other board members like to comment?
So I just wanted to say that I'm really encouraged by the amount of green space that's still gonna be left in this neighborhood, even with, the new pond put in and the possibility of putting a park, because I know a lot of people who live in that neighborhood who have young kids and everything, their kids love playing on the playgrounds or whatever at the store, and so still having a place for the families in that existing neighborhood, plus these houses, to have a place for their kids to play and everything, and having that green space is important, because I know a lot of people were concerned that it was just gonna be full of houses, which was, of course, hurt the drainage, but also then there would be no green space in that neighborhood. So I think it's good that there's gonna still be a significant green space there for families and.
Anyone else?
Just a reminder, because it has been quite some time since we've had a residential subdivision in front of us, that any action should also include incorporating the findings as presented from the subdivision committee review.
Would anyone like to put that approval in a motion?
I will put that motion up with a little bit of help, Marta.
Yes.
So I like to make a motion that we approve the MPC 02-21S
For primary approval with the conditions and modifications for store estates as set forth in the findings as presented.
Correct. Very nicely said.
Do I hear say, I have a second?
I'll second.
I have one right here.
Jerry
Mr.
already
Dishman.
got it.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mrs. Hensley?
Yes.
Mr. Landis?
Yes.
Mr. Matzenbacher?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
Mr. Wisely?
Yes.
Mr. Dishman?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
That is 8 yes, 0 no, with 1 absent, and that is primary approval of the subdivision, and with all of the conditions as set forth in the findings. And what that means is that gives the go-ahead for all of the detailed designs to be finalized for the storm sewers, for the sanitary sewers, for the streets, for the trails, for all of the infrastructure, and those will then be submitted to the appropriate entities and permits obtained, and they can start working on the development. So, that's it.
Very good. Legislative action?
That is, the city zone map changes for 2020 and the county zone map changes for 2020 were both approved, city by city council, county by county commissioners, and the rezonings at Fusen and Cowan Road to the limited industrial zone, those two rezonings were adopted by the commissioners at their April 19th meeting. So, that's it.
Okay, a report?
Yes, in front of you, you have an excerpt from the comprehensive plan website called Together DM, and I thought you might be interested in seeing some of the data that's been collected, that is being driven not only by strict data collection, but also by the survey that was open in March, and the what we're calling kitchen table conversations. Several of the steering committee members convened small groups and conducted directed questions to them to start trying to identify what the big things are for our community, meaning what are the items of most concern that we need to make sure that we address in these plans that will be resulting from this project. And so I won't go over that in detail, but just say that some of the big things that are coming up are the same kinds of things that we heard about this evening in terms of quality of place and amenities and recreational facilities, and also fixing basic infrastructure, which could be roads as well as drainage. So I thought that was interesting. So anyway, and you can go to the Together DM website at any time and also see this type of information as well as some additional information. And I will say that in June, we will have our second steering committee meeting, but there will also be public open house opportunities that we will advertise and let people know about, so that, and as of right now, we're planning on those being in-person open house sessions. So that's the update on that.
Very good. Anything else?
Yep. Oh, yes. Thank you. I forgot this last time. It's been a while since we've had a project in the village, but there is a village review committee, and the Plan Commission has 2 appointments, and one of them expired at the beginning of the year, and so I would ask for the commission's blessing to reappoint Phil Tevis to the village review committee. So if you...
Someone like to put that in the form of a motion? I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hensley?
Yes.
Mr. Landis?
Yes.
Mr. Matzenbacher?
Yes.
Mrs. Seib?
Yes.
Mr. Wisely?
Yes.
Mr. Dishman?
Yes.
Mr. Hall? And Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I almost forgot it again. Thanks.
Any-
That's it.
That's it? All right, anyone else? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.
I didn't get, who made the motion?
Alan.
Okay.